And welcome to the Invest GP meeting of September 17th, 2024. On this meeting is myself as chair, Councillor Bressie, Councillor Palat, and Mayor Clayton. I'll call a meeting to order and ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Bressie.
So moved.
Thank you for that. Call a question.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
And that carries. We will move on through the agenda. Next up is our service area update, and I would look to Chief Glavin to provide that for us today.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. We'll start in economic development, where there's a number of updates. First off is a milestone celebration for Tire Pro. We congratulated them recently for 30 years in business in the community. And we just want to encourage anybody else who knows of an upcoming milestone for any businesses that have been in the community for a significant amount of time to let us know, and we'd be happy to include them as well. In rural renewal, the community partnership is meeting this week to review 15 employer applications. In the last 2 weeks, they have issued 22 candidate endorsement letters. And tomorrow afternoon, the Rural Renewal Program Coordinator is giving a presentation for employers as part of Welcome Week. Invest Northwest has launched, or Invest NW. Last week, City Council and Invest Grande Prairie teamed up with the county and the MD to host a launch event for Invest Northwest. The Grande Prairie Greenview Corridor, marking a new approach to regional investment attraction. For carbon capture, Invest Grande Prairie joined the County of Grande Prairie and the MD of Greenview to host the inaugural Invest Northwest booth at the Carbon Capture Show in Edmonton. As well, Physicians Barbecue was held last week with the Invest GP team, supported by Mayor and Council, in hosting an appreciation barbecue for local physicians, medical students, and their families, and they received great feedback from the attendees. And since January, Grande Prairie has seen 20 new physicians working in the community. And with that, I'll take any questions that I'll attempt to answer.
I see no one throwing their hand in the air, so I think you got off scot-free for that. So thank you for that. We will move on to backyard suite regulations, and perhaps you could introduce that.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. Today we have draft regulations for garden suites, and this is flowing back from when administration proposed a number of updates to the secondary suite bylaw to increase density across the city. Council asked for more information before making a decision on garden suites specifically, and today Ms. Downing is here to present.
Go ahead, Ms. Downing.
Thank you. We have a presentation here, and as Chief Glavin said, this comes back from the regulations that were presented to Council on June 17th. It's important to note that there are existing regulations for backyard suites in the existing land use bylaw for garage suites. So this presentation will walk through what we currently allow and what is being proposed in the bylaw that was presented previously. So Council directed administration to bring back a report on garden suites, including details on size, design, and engagement plans. Currently, only garage suites are allowed. They need to be built either above or attached to a garage and require internal parking spaces. Proposed is to include garden suites that don't require internal parking spaces. The lot restrictions with garage suites or backyard suites is they're only allowed in low-density residential districts. The minimum lot width for a lot to allow a garage or garden suite is 12.2 meters or 40 feet. And they must be on the same lot with a single detached dwelling. They are currently discretionary in the land use bylaw, and no proposed change is being introduced. Discretionary uses require neighborhood notification. Development Authority reviews the application and allows for appeals, and there are additional costs and timelines for approval. Currently, the maximum height is 8.5 meters to the eaves, which typically results in about a 32-foot high suite as a maximum. Proposed is limiting the height to 7.6 meters or 25 feet overall to the peak. Currently, there is one stall per bedroom in the suite in addition to the two allowed for or required for the primary dwelling. And what is being proposed is the same as what was adopted for secondary suites, which is one less than the number of bedrooms with a minimum of one. And it's important to note that there's only 2 bedrooms allowed in a backyard suite. There's currently no maximum floor area for a suite. And what's being proposed is 130 meters, including living area and garage spaces, with a maximum of 60 meters on the second story. And the next slide here will get into site coverage, which also influences the size of a suite. So currently there's no maximum site coverage for the suite itself. However, there is maximum site coverage for the lot, which is typically 45% on a low-density residential lot. What's being proposed is a maximum site coverage of 20% of the total site coverage of the lot, and the lot still can't exceed that 45%. So in order to get this size of suite on a lot, 130 meters squared, which is the maximum, the lot would have to be 650 meters squared in size, which is a very large lot, usually about 18 meters wide frontage. So we've got the images we had before that show the lot layout with the suite on it. And this would be a 2-story on a large lot with no lane, and a 1-story on that same lot with no lane. GIS helped us out here with some 3D renderings of what the suite might look like based on a lot in Grande Prairie. And so this is the 1-story in the backyard of a lot, and this is a 2-story. And I have it from a few more angles here, the 1-story and the 2-story, and the 1-story and the 2-story. And now I have a lot with a lane, just to show another example. The regulations aren't different for a lot with a lane, but this is another example. And here's some renderings of the 1-story and the 2-story, and the 1-story, 2-story. And this is in the back view of it, the 1-story and the 2-story, and the 1-story and the 2-story. And we have a shadowing video to share as well that GIS created. I also included a municipal comparison in your report, and this is a brief summary of that included in your report. One of the key takeaways is that all of the comparable municipalities do allow garden suites to some degree with different regulations, and as well as garage suites. The maximum height varies a lot, and the maximum size and the way that it's calculated vary as well with different approaches taken. The ultimate goal would be to have the suites secondary and subordinate to the primary use of the lot. And thank you. That concludes the presentation, and we're open for questions.
I'll look to the committee first for questions. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. Just a question on the sizes of the units. Can you remind me on our legal secondary suites, the upstairs, downstairs, what's the maximum size of a basement suite that we're allowed to do currently through the land use bylaw?
Through the chair, the regulation was recently changed in the bylaw to say that it could take up 100% of the basement. It used to be 80% of the primary dwelling, but now if it's fully located in the basement, it can take up the entire basement.
Okay. Okay. And is there a maximum size on the main floor then, on those types of units?
Yes, there is. And I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. I would have to look that up.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking those questions is I'm struggling with a 1,300 square foot, 1,400 square foot property being basically able to build in your backyard. Looking at the other municipalities outside of Edmonton, most are around that 75 meter range. So I'm just wondering why we chose such a big square footage on that, or if there's some explanation of why we thought a 1,300 meter would be the right size.
Thank you, through the chair. The number was chosen based on the combination of allowing that as well as the 20% coverage on the lot in order to provide opportunity. Administration is open to the discussion and, committee proposing a smaller size as well.
Okay. If I can just follow up. Sure. I just want to ask Administrator, is this report supposed to come to council? Would it be better to wait for council to make amendments to it, or would you prefer to us to try to make amendments at committee that would go to council? I'm just wondering what would be the recommendation of administration on that.
Thank you, through the chair. It would be preferable if we could draft the bylaw based on what committee would like to see, and then that would be presented to the public in the closer to what might be adopted. So we want to be transparent as to what bylaw we're presenting.
Okay. I'm okay with looking at making an amendment to that, I guess, Chair Blackmore, but I'm okay with popping out of the queue if there's other people in it and come back in.
I do have Mayor Clayton with her hand up, so I'll go to Mayor Clayton next.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I'm just trying to navigate between devices and reports. My understanding, we didn't make significant changes to the garage suites, correct?
Thank you, through the chair. The changes that were proposed to make for garage suites were pulled completely from the proposed bylaw, so no changes were made to garage suites.
Okay, and to date, does administration have any knowledge of communication from neighbors or neighborhoods that have concerns about any existing garage suites in our community?
Thank you, through the chair. No.
So I have I think what I'm hearing from Councillor Plot, some similar concerns. I think that garage suites and garden suites are significantly different in nature, and it appears that these garden suites are a little bigger than my thought. So I'll leave it to see what Councillor Plot was intending and go from there. Thank you.
I have Councillor Bressie next.
Great. Thank you, Chair Blackmore. Yeah, I've got some concerns in terms of there's not a maximum size, I think, for these, but I want it to be clearly subordinate to the primary dwelling, not feel like you got a second full house in the backyard. I'm curious, I noticed that Red Deer and I got two questions. First of all, I noticed that Red Deer and Lethbridge had a rule in their bylaws that it could be only 75% of the building footprint of the principal dwelling unit. Is there a strong opinion on administration why that might not work here? Or I guess I'm looking for, was there a reason that we didn't choose that? Or if council did choose to adopt something like that, would there be any unintended consequences that administration thinks we should be aware of?
Thank you, through the chair. We had it as 80% of the primary dwelling when we did secondary suites with a garage suite. And the unintended consequence that we determined through that was that the basement would have to be altered and hived off and common space in the basement. So that's the reason that we didn't probably suggest this approach. But because it's a totally standalone dwelling in the backyard, I don't see any issue if that's the direction that council chooses to go.
Thank you. And then my second question is, in terms of maximum height, did you find any bylaws that, so we've just got the total height here, but do any of these other cities have a rule that it can't be taller than the principal dwelling, or it has to be shorter than the principal dwelling? Did you find anything like that in your jurisdictional scan?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, especially looking countrywide, as these regulations are coming across the country right now with the push for housing, I have seen regulations that say that it can't be higher than what the primary dwelling is or what's allowed within the district.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I think I've shown my cards of what I hope we do with this.
I will just jump in the queue quickly. My question is, at the current size that administration is recommending, are there really actually any lots in the city of Grande Prairie that are large enough that you could build a secondary suite or a garden suite of this size?
Thank you, through the chair. The two lots I showed in my presentation are in the city. And I did have to search high and low to find lots of that size, but I did find them.
To me, because that would be an unusual situation where we could find a lot big enough to put that in, I would find it much more reasonable to maximize a smaller size. For example, 75 meters seems to be a relatively common number across Canada, and that to me is a better number, but that's showing my hand as well. And so I see Mayor Clayton, you have your hand up. Is that still up or new?
No, it's new. Whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. Just on the height, the 7.62, I'm curious why administration went that way. I quite like the indication of what St. Albert has in regards to different heights for different facilities. The 7.62, why did administration choose that?
Thank you through the chair. The idea was that a garden suite could be 2 stories. It wouldn't necessarily have to have parking on the main level.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll come back to Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. So I'd like to make an amendment, I guess, on this, that we would make the maximum size 75 square meters or 80% of the dwelling currently on the site. And just to speak to that, I think that the comments around the table are that, I think the appetite's a little worrisome on bigger than 75 meters. I also have a hard time thinking we let a 900 or 1,000 square foot unit go behind a 500 or 600, like in an older area of town right now. If I look at Hillside or Swan, even if there's a 600 or 700 square foot house on it, it would look weird to me to think that the house behind it could be actually bigger than that. So don't want to get too prescriptive. I know I've always said I don't want to get prescriptive when it comes to building, but I think because these are infill areas that are typically going to go in with that, I want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're going to have a lot of these don't actually qualify because people are going to have too many people throw pitchforks at them when they come to apply for them. So my motion would be that we make a maximum of 75% and 80% of the current dwelling on the site.
I'll open that up for discussion or debate on that motion. Councillor Bressy.
Sorry, 75 meters, not 75 meters maximum size, or 80% of the current dwelling that's on the site.
That's what it says.
I think I said, I didn't say meters, I think, though. So
oh, okay.
She captured
it says
it for me.
square meters.
She knows
anyway,
what I'm thinking.
Councillor Bressy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Blackmore. I struggle with this a little bit just in terms of I really think for me it should be dependent on the principal dwelling. If there's a monster house, then well, sure, I don't really care about the maximum 75 meters. I really care about the 80% size, but also, Chair Blackmore, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask administration or Councillor Plott might actually be able to answer this better, but also, honestly, I don't understand really what you can get with 75 meters in terms of, can you do a couple bedrooms with that? Can you do a small kitchen and dining area? It's just, I've lived in 2 places my adult life, and I just don't really understand how big you could get with that, so I'd love some clarity on what that would actually look like. Is it appropriate for me to ask Councillor Palat?
I mean, I can speak anecdotally, I guess, from that world, but I think 75 meters would allow you to do for sure a 1-bedroom and probably a smaller 2-bedroom as well.
That would be about 800 square feet.
Yeah.
The first house I lived in was 940 square feet and had 3 bedrooms and was not cramped.
Yeah, my first one was 450 square feet.
And Councillor Berg just reminded me, a lot of our apartments in those 2 bedrooms are probably smaller than that sort of range as well.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment as it's presented? Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I'm just wondering, a question for Councillor Plott. I'm wondering if it's not greater than 80%. I'm trying to sort of listening to Councillor Bressy's comments, and I appreciate your 75 meter square, but the comment in regards to what ends up being bigger, I just wonder if it's actually reflecting what you're hoping it does, or if there should be consideration of a maximum percentage of the original dwelling.
Councillor Palat.
Yeah, just seeing the wording now, Mayor Clayton, I could switch the motion to say 75 meters or up to 80% of the principal dwelling.
Perfect, thank you.
I don't see any other hands coming up. Oh, Councillor Bressie.
Sorry, just be pedantic and make sure we're all on the same page. But I think what we're looking for is whichever one's smaller would be what we're looking for.
100%. So, and not greater than.
Did you want to add that into your motion?
I guess maybe the way I'm reading it, it's up to 80% of the principal dwelling, so they couldn't go past that. So if it was a 1,500 square foot, it would be 1,200 feet or 75 meters. So it would have to fall in either one of those, I guess, in my mind. I'm not sure if that's clear for administration, if that would give them enough on that as well.
Chief Glavin?
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I understand the intent, but I think it would be useful just to say whichever is smaller, just so we're all very clear.
Okay, so yeah, I'd be happy to add the wording of whichever would be smaller at the end of that.
Okay, we'll wait for that change to come up on our e-scribe. And do I have any other questions or concerns about the amendment before I call a motion? Seeing none, I will call a motion. And that carries unanimously. That was actually an amendment to the suite regulations. Councillor Bressie?
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I'd also like to move that. Oh, sorry, I did notice we should be saying committee, not council direct. But that committee direct administration to amend the proposed backyard suite regulations to limit the height to the height of the principal dwelling.
Okay.
Sweet.
Sorry, maybe that's being a little bit sloppy wording, because I want to still allow it to be. I want it to be the same as what we've got here. So the height as administration proposed, or the height of the dwelling, whichever is lesser.
So can you say simply not to exceed the height of the dwelling?
Sure. Yeah.
Look at this teamwork.
Do we have any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll look at administration. Does that give you clear direction?
Yes, it does. We just would like to point out that that may mean no garage suites on lots with single-story homes.
Yeah, and I think we're comfortable with that. I don't know. Councillor Bressie, you're looking concerned.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think I would say then limit the height of garden suites to not exceed the height of the principal dwelling. Thank you. And just speak to that. I know that for me, a garden suite does feel a little bit different than a house suite or than a garage suite. With the garage, the primary dwelling still is using that, and also I don't really want to create a situation where we've got a few things that we make legally non-conforming all of a sudden. I do want to make sure that we're sensitive to what we've allowed in the past. So, yeah, I do think we should limit this amendment to only garden suites.
Okay. I see no hands going up, so I'm going to call the question on that motion. And that motion carries. Our original recommended motion is to direct administration to present draft land use bylaw regulations to City Council for consideration. Councillor Bressie?
I'm happy to make that motion.
And that would be present draft land use bylaw regulations as amended. And I'll call that question. And that also carries. Now I need to open my agenda again. There we go. The only other order of business on this meeting is the outstanding items list, and I would look for Chief Glavin to bring us up to date on that.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. Only one update on this one, which is item 1282. This was actually dealt with at the July 29th council meeting where those amendments were approved.
Okay, And I would look for a motion to accept that. Councillor Palat.
I would move the outstanding items list as amended.
Call the question. That carries, and we will be back for our next meeting in a few minutes.